Yeah.
Right. Welcome back to S.T.A.R, Science Training and Research, episode 2. With Sunil and Faz. Hope you're all well. Right. So, Sunil, how's it going?
All good. Really excited and happy to be back on episode 2. So we survived the pilot episode, and the studio has given us the thumbs up to continue on with the show. So
yeah, the audience.
I've not got any. I've not got any feedback. Did anyone kind of feedback to you and tell you like what they enjoyed?
Yeah, Ollie did. Ollie, if you're listening, thank you. He liked, and also Tukia, who's a friend of mine from like primary school. He messaged on the video, and he also messaged me on WhatsApp as well, and he said he really liked it. So it's been like 2 or 3 people who've said something about it, which is nice. And my channel got about the same amount of views as yours. So that's cool. It's good.
Yeah, I was interested into kind of finding out, if it was like more nutrition they were interested in, or training, or mindset. So
what did he say?
Yeah,
Tukia said that he liked the bit about fasting, and he liked the bit about doing things out of the ordinary. Ollie liked the discussion about how we're approaching things from a different angle than like mainstream fitness. So that was kind of cool feedback. Yeah. I'll send you the screenshots actually, so you can have a look.
All right, Kaylee. Yeah. Nah, that's interesting. Yeah, but pretty much doing all right at the minute. Still can't taste or smell. So it's been nearly about 2.5 weeks now. But yeah, slowly adjusting to that.
Yeah, that a bit worrying for you, like.
It's a really strange experience, because obviously I've never experienced this before. So for it to happen, it's kind of like having to adjust to that, and like I think accepting it as well was another part. So just accepting the fact that this might last for a while, I think has helped. But it's a strange experience, because I've kind of my experience with eating has always been dictated by taste and smell. Now it's sort of like I'm just eating for survival, which is like obviously what we're doing, but the taste and smell is a big part in that as well. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about that? Like I couldn't imagine it. Like, do you get anything from your nose? Do you get the textures? Like, what are you experiencing when you eat? Or is it literally just like you could be eating cardboard?
Yeah, so there is like a slight sense of smell, but there's nothing with taste. The how I explain it is like if I have honey or like cinnamon, I get a sensation of like I know that it's sweet. It's very strange to explain, but when I put like salt,
Oh, I don't mind either way. Okay, you good to go?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, the sweetness and the so like the sweetness and the savoriness I can differentiate between, but I just can't taste. So I know when something's salty, I know when something's sweet, but it's very strange. Like the texture of foods is something else. So like crunchy vegetables and crunchy fruit helps at the minute. So yeah, that's kind of my experience at the minute with that. Yeah.
I got another question on that. Is it making you more want to eat like different things? Like, or do you want to eat more like flavorsome food? Because I don't know, like, is it changing your needs and wants, whatever?
This is weird, because I'm putting stuff like paprika still and salt on my food, and I'm like, why am I doing that? It's like, because it's not gonna make a difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, why am I putting cinnamon on stuff? Because I'm not gonna taste it. But it's just like that. I've been in that habit of doing that for so long, where I'm just doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna make a difference if I do it or not. So it's more textures that I'm going for, more of the crunch. And I think that is like how they get people hooked onto processed foods with like crisps and stuff, where the crunch is what kind of gets them hooked as well. So, but yeah, it's like, I think I mentioned this in my YouTube video where I said it could be like a potential superpower where if I don't get my taste or my smell back, I'll just be eating like the most nutritious foods and it won't make a difference. So yeah,
I wonder
that's
if there's
just,
like a genetic variance with that. Like maybe that's one of the reasons why people go for certain people go like just one of the factors where people go for like more highly calorific foods because you know like you were saying there's a difference with the process and the texture and stuff. I wonder if there's a possible mechanism there. Like it's hard to test that. Like how are you going to test it?
yeah, because like, you know how with like processed foods, like people kind of destroy their, is it palatability?
Yep.
By, you know, never coming back to like a fruit or a vegetable and then it tastes like crap. That's another thing as well. Yeah.
That might be an interesting thing to suggest to like some kind of diet research or something. Like maybe one of the factors which affects. But then I suppose what would be the point of studying it? It would just be you wouldn't actually be able to change it because you know, or maybe sometime in the future you could bioengineer a virus which could kill off your desire to have crunchy foods. Because at a certain point they're going to have it all down to a science, you know, because they're already looking at things like leptin and appetite, and they've looked at that and the role of that. But then leptin's not so useful when you inject it because you get leptin resistance. And they're looking at other factors like fat burners. But I think at some point they're going to like chemically engineer, and it's just not going to be a problem. You'll just take a pill or whatever, and it'll be fine. It's like the example of erectile dysfunction and Viagra and Cialis. So like before Cialis was like readily available, if you went to the doctor and said, you know, I've got a problem with what X, Y, and Z, they would like tell you to like work on your marriage, like spice things up and you know, try toys and stuff like that. But like after the invention of Viagra, they'd just be like, you know, here's a pill, you will have sex tonight, like that's it, no questions asked. So and it just solves the problem. And I imagine at some point obesity is probably going to be like that. We'll just get it to the point where it's a science, we understand it, we know it.
Yeah, on that point as well, I think I was experiencing some sort of stress eating. So like, I don't know if it was like anxiety. I don't know. I don't know if I've experienced anxiety, but I don't know if it's like that lingering. It's like a lingering feeling that like kind of doesn't leave you. And I don't know whether the experience of that kind of affected my eating, because you know how some people can stress eat, and just like eating in general can help with stress. So then I started like looking into like what's the term? Is it mastification or mastication? What's the
not masturbation?
It's the chewing. No, not that. Yeah.
That's a real distraction altogether.
So yeah, I was like, yeah. So like chewing gum was something like I was using recently, sugar-free chewing gum, just to kind of probably help cope with that. But yeah, that's just some of my thoughts with that experience. Just sharing, you know, kind of what happened, because
it's like a distraction technique that people use. Like they eat food to basically distract them from the day's stresses. Like I cover that a lot with my clients. There's sort of unconscious eating, and I think there's distraction. You pair that together with somebody who's I mean, this is a typical diet model for most people that I've seen is they're undernourished in the daytime. They leave the house on a coffee and good intentions, and they power through the day. Then when it comes to the evening, they're starving and they're also stressed. So they're binging, and it's just like that's every day, 24-hour cycle. And that I work with people a lot who do that, who are in that sort of, and just subconsciously in that sort of cycle. But yeah, no, interesting chat. So yeah, update on your COVID experience. Cool. I think that the first thing I wanted to kick off with talking about today was I saw this. So, you know, I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about like very low calorie diets and extreme diets and pushing. It's kind of like what we were talking about last week. And I saw this, and I'm going to read it out in a second, but it was a discussion piece by a famous YouTuber called, his name is Shaun Nalewanj, I think. He's been around for a while because I remember him when I was first on YouTube like years ago. I think he must have been around like before this decade, last decade. He was maybe 2008, 2009. He's been around for a while. He's old school. But anyway, he put out this piece. I'm gonna just read out a couple of paragraphs. And this is it. When it comes to losing fat, oftentimes the reality is that slow equals fast and fast equals slow. In other words, when your primary focus is on simply losing fat as quickly as possible, you'll progress more slowly or not at all in the overall picture, since you'll naturally gravitate to more extreme methods that aren't sustainable. Just to finish, he says, things like starving yourself with a large calorie deficit. You'll get some fast results, but you'll burn out. On the other hand, if you stop rushing things and you realize it's a lifestyle, you'll get your goals. Blah, blah, blah. So basically, it's like the same sort of tired message that we were fighting back against last time on the S.T.A.R show. And and so my question to that is, all right, Shaun, that's great, but where's the research which supports what you're saying? And or is it just your opinion? For the most part, it's just his opinion, or perhaps the people he's worked with, perhaps he's imposing his methods on the people he work with, because it's certainly not in the research. And that's what we're going to look at today. It's for the most part, the lower calorie diets are very, very well supported in the research for good long-term success. And so what he's saying is absolute crap. And it's all well and good saying, look, this is what I find works for me and my guys, but putting yourself in sort of juxtapositioning yourself against something which is clearly works in the research. It's like, you're talking shit, Shaun. That's what it is. So that's kind of what I want to address today. Like, I think that's sort of an unnecessary and without foundation attack on very low calorie diets, which are well supported in the research. So he's sort of going out on a limb here without any research. So what he's saying is crap, basically. But it's a very easy sentiment to get behind. And that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about. But I just want to let you respond first and then, talk about the first one. So, what do you think?
Yeah, so just on that point, I'm wondering where he's kind of coming from with that, in terms of, with my experience with very low calorie diets. I've kind of figured out and experienced that the way you set it up is important as well. So I don't know whether he's coming from like the just calories in, calories out, or if he's looking into like setting up macros a certain way. But the way that I've experienced it in the fastest fat loss kind of approach, I would say for the majority of my time doing that on a very low calorie diet, my hunger was not an issue because of the way I was eating and the sources of like food and the food items that I was using. I kind of documented that on my Instagram, where I was kind of showing people, and I literally showed everything that I was doing. And I was like, look, like, hunger is not an issue for me at the minute because of the way that I'm setting up my diet. Even though the calories were very low, it's the way that I structured it that helped me get through that without any issues with hunger. I did experience hunger at some stages, but that was like around the 800 calorie mark, which is probably understandable if you just think about that. But when it was in that period of, around the low thousands to mid thousands on calories, it wasn't an issue. And that was the high protein, the fibrous vegetables. I just released a video going over, volume eating and how to set that up, which I think is a massive help. So I don't know whether he's kind of, I don't know where he's coming from and like the setup of that, diet he's talking about, or I'm wondering like how he's approaching it and how he's setting it up and why the people that he's probably working with are experiencing these problems with like crashing. And so I think like the setup and how you set up your approach is a massive part of it. So that's where I'm coming from. So just to throw back to you on that.
I think that's a really good point, and we'll cover that in a little while when we look at. But I want to just look at sort of the background of this. Where I think he's coming from is where everyone in the diet industry comes from, which is to say, my way's better because diets fail. All right, and that is a very easy position to take. Now, you look at the keto crowd, like your Dr. Fung and all those kind of hucksters, right? You look at the So you look at those guys. Also, you look at the people that we were talking about last week, the guys who, like this guy, set up their position to go, you know, don't do it in an extreme way or you'll get an eating disorder. Basically, diets are bad, my way's better. And I want to just kind of point out, I'm looking here at a study on long-term weight maintenance. And this is by Wing and Phelan in 2005. Basically, this is the statistic. Research has shown that approximately 20% of overweight individuals are successful at long-term weight loss, when that's defined as you got to lose at least 10% of your body weight and maintain it for at least a year. Now, so that's 20% after a year. And the follow-up to that is, for those 20%, I think it's a further like down reduction of maybe another, like maybe 10% of the people of those 20%. So like a minuscule amount, maybe like 2% of people sustain it for 5 years. So the dieting statistics are awful. So all these people in diet, this is super important to understand, because like all these people in the diet industry who are saying my way is the best way, everything else sucks. They're all doing it with the position of saying, of leveraging off the fact that everyone's bad at dieting. Doesn't matter what they do. So like I hate it when people go like, yeah, flexible dieting is the best way to go, and this method's shit because diets fail. It's like, no, they all mostly fail. Like it's really hard to do long-term weight loss successfully. So you can't set up your entire position based on that fact. That is like a really narrow-minded point of view. It's really dogmatic. And that's where I've got an issue with that. Just like I've got an issue with Fung. I've got an issue with a lot of people who are putting their own position saying like my way's better because, you know, diets fail. So yeah, what do you think?
You know, on the Fung part, I don't know if this is correct. Maybe you can, you know, correct me on this. But is he saying like fructose from like fruit is bad and you should avoid fruit? Or I don't understand. That's what I'm taking away from him. Is that true? Or
yeah, he says all kinds of crazy shit. You know what? Funnily enough, I read his book actually, right? The Obesity Code, because I figured if I'm talking so much shit about Fung, I at least need to read the book. So I went and read it, and bottom line is I was highly unimpressed. So he adheres to the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity, which basically says that it is insulin, which is the main cause of body fat and all things bad, like, you know, rather than calories. And that's not supported by the research at all. I'll tell you what, there's one guy, well, I'll tell you how bad the situation is. This might be bleeding into another topic, but the research on that area is so bad for two reasons. One, most of the research is not designed particularly well, and it's done with like questionnaires. And you know, you work with people with diet, like the number one thing is that you're struggling with right initially is misreporting. So you ask someone like what they ate after the fact. I mean, come on, you're never going to get a straight answer. And so there's that. So a lot of these studies are based on just poor methods. Now, when you do get, and also the other thing is there's a lot of dodgy research. So I'm going to talk about this because Menno Henselman has already talked about it, and but apparently it's kind of all hush hush. So I'm just going to say it in this way. Menno said, right, so I don't get in trouble. Menno said, for the 5 people that listen to this, right? Menno said that a guy called Jacob Wilson who was doing a lot of keto research, basically released a paper in 2015 or 16 where the data figures were just all messed up. They're basically falsified. But you're not in research circles, you're not really allowed to just call somebody out and say, dude, you just falsified your records. You have to sort of ask them questions, and then they can deny it, or they can provide plausible deniability, all that kind of stuff. You can't just say, look, you're full of crap. It's just not the way it's done. So anyway, Lane Norton has really fallen out with him from that. Menno has eventually fallen out with him for that as well, even though Menno didn't want to believe it to begin with. And essentially after that study, this Jacob Wilson guy has gone and released a lot of books, made a lot of money through seminars, got himself a nice tan, and he's now like a keto celebrity superstar. So there's 2 reasons. Like, the research is generally poorly done, and that's definitely messed up. You know, like that guy's like selling keto supplements, and which are obvious crap. So yeah, I Fung basically adheres to that model of not only diet but also of advertising. A lot of his science is based on very, very sketchy things. And if we look at the studies and this is going off on a right tangent here, but if we look at the metabolic ward studies done by Kevin Hall, they were done. Now, these are really great. I should explain to the audience what metabolic ward studies are. So basically, the problem, as I explained about it, was that if you just ask people after the fact with questionnaires, and you say to them, look, hey, what did you eat? All that kind of stuff. There's lots of misreporting. Now, you put people in a metabolic ward, it costs a lot of money to do that because you're basically housing them and feeding them. Metabolic ward is a closed off area where they live in your premises, in your laboratory, and you measure everything they do, all their activity, everything they eat. You even count their leftovers and you weigh them out and you subtract that against, so everything is set. Now, Kevin Hall did a series of studies which were very well funded, very well done in metabolic wards. And the end result of one of the studies was the actual weight loss between the different diets was the same. Okay, so assuming the same deficit, the actual weight loss was exactly the same. There was no difference between low carb or low fat diets. Now, here's an interesting twist to that. This one, I'm not sure how people want to take this, but there was no end change in the weight loss, but the low carb group actually had a higher energy expenditure. Now, again, that's a topic for a different day, I think, or maybe we'll talk about that later, but that's unusual because they had a higher energy expenditure. So resting energy expenditure was higher, or just, I think they just called it just energy expenditure. EE was higher, but weight loss was the same. So there's some kind of weird mechanism going on there where the metabolism is higher or the expenditure is higher, but it's not translating into the same rate of weight loss. Perhaps the body's adjusting, I don't know. So anyway, yes, Fung is full of shit. And also, you mentioned snake diet last time. Do you want to just because we never got around to talking about it. I was listening back to part one. What did you find out about snake diet? Because I like Cole, was it Cole?
Cole Robinson. So I have come across his channel in the past, and I followed a few of his videos. So I don't know what you've come across on his channel. But there are some things that I like about what he kind of promotes, because he does promote being active throughout the day, and he kind of makes this joke about being like Michael Myers, where he's like, look at Michael Myers, he doesn't stop moving, he's always walking, he's always chasing down his victims. He tries to he's funny in that way, where he's like, just be more active, which I agree with, step counts you could call it. But yeah, from the nutritional side, what I would say is he obviously promotes the snake diet, which means you're eating in one massive meal, which is how a snake eats, and that's the way he's got the name, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's kind of what I've taken away from his channel. He does promote the fasting with the electrolyte drink as well, I believe, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, he does.
Snake juice. So he promotes that. That's what I've seen from him.
Yeah.
I agree with the activity, so being more active. So he's getting people to be more active throughout the day. With the eating, obviously the nutritional side, I guess that's his kind of thing, where he wants people to kind of practice fasting, and then probably because he does say, I think if I remember right, having a massive meal throughout the week, and then continuing the fast. I think that's the way he kind of explains it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
He made a video about eating McDonald's, which was similar to Jordan's S.T.A.R. I know that there's some stuff about S.T.A.R. that you don't like, but these two have made videos about eating McDonald's and still losing weight.
Right.
Take it for what you want, but watch. They are interesting, I would say, and entertaining videos of how they've documented it. But I think on that point, they're promoting the calories in versus calories out kind of approach, but they're not really touching on how to set up your macros and how to choose your macros wisely. So that's just some of my thoughts on that. But let me know what you think.
I don't think he does.
In terms of
I don't think he does do the calories in versus calories out thing. I think Cole kind of rejects calories in versus calories out. I'll be honest, I don't know much about him. I didn't read his book, or if he's got a book, I don't know. I thought I would go straight for the kingpin Fung, because that seems to be who everyone discusses. And I read that book, and I was, as I say, highly disappointed. It was all very biased. The thing about research is if you present it in a certain way, it can come across very convincing. And people go, "Hey, he's a doctor. He knows studies. He's saying this," and then boom.
Do you know, just quickly on the point previously made before this, this this trend of making stuff sexy, like keto sounds sexy, low carb sounds sexy,
Yeah.
and it's like this like cultish behavior.
Yes.
And I think like the psychological aspect of that, people respond to. It's like, oh, so what are you doing today? Oh, I'm making like this bread, but it's not bread. It's made out of almond flour and it's not carbs. It's like people love that, and whether people want to admit it or not, they are attracted to that. So that point about, you know, these trends in diets and saying that my diet's the best, I think that has a massive part to play, like just making it more attractive and making it sound more sexy. So like with my video, I don't know if you've noticed in the title, I put my low carb approach, my diet secrets revealed, and it's like that's what kind of draws people in.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a point on that. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. I'll tell you what I've noticed as well is, you know, if you look at a guy like Eric Helms, you look at the diet advice he puts out, it's very bland. Okay, and you look at the type of people who listen to him, they tend to be fairly well structured. Like if you look at people who go towards Fung and Cole, that kind of stuff, they tend to be a little bit unhinged. I mean, if you get into conversations with them online, I don't recommend it, but like they're really feverish about what they believe is to be true. Like there's no actual discussing. For a brief period of time, I last year, I spent some time on the fasting subreddits. It was the worst waste of my time ever, right? And I was talking to people and it was awful. And they just had no argument whatsoever. It was just like, yeah, read the book. And I was like, yeah, but this isn't true. It's like, yeah, but I'm not going to believe you because Fung is a doctor. It's like, oh, just shoot me already. But it's the same with, you see that, you know, you touched on a point there about like people wanting to belong. And it's the same if you look at bodybuilders in the UK. Everybody, and this is for any of you fuckers who are listening, right? Every bodybuilder in the UK has got the JP oversized hoodie. He's got the tights on. He's got about 1 billion bands, who's probably nicked from his missus and like her yoga bands. Probably taken him to the gym to set him up around his arse. He's doing Romanian deadlifts. He's talking about the process and like it's just cringe. It's so cringe, and you know, it's the same thing. People like to belong. And it might be complete BS, but like I know a guy who is well into his. This is going off at a real tangent here, but he's well into his high intensity training. He loves his 2-set approach. Hasn't grown for shit in like 3 years. Just looks exactly the fucking same. He's gotten stronger, mainly because his training he just learned to cheat more weight up. And my point is this, right? You could say to him, look, dude, your training's not working. He's like, well, I'm getting stronger. He's like, yeah, your training's not working. Yeah, but like, you know, I'm eating more. Yeah, but your training's not working. Yeah, but I'm a little bit leaner. It's like, yeah, but the bottom line is like, yeah, but I like what I do. It's like, you've got to draw the line somewhere. Somewhere the results have got to reflect the method. Like if you're saying your method's fantastic, your results have got to reflect that. That's always been my shit test. Like that's always been my shit test. Like, okay, Faz, you can talk a good game, but are you getting results? And this is why I say with coaching, the only thing that matters is getting the results. It's safely, you know, of course. But it's like, so what I mean, I've said it to him lots of times, but he doesn't listen because he's just fucking nuts. But he's an example of a guy who's so completely into what he's doing, he's lost sight of the woods for the trees. The end result is always got to be progress. Are you progressing? If you're not, then all the self-talk. It's like, for example, with you and I, Sunil, had we not actually got shredded, right? All of my advice, all of your ingenuity at putting together good meals, all of our work together would have been bullshit. I mean, you know, but you lost 66 pounds.
So you've taught me to fish. You've not given me a fish. Is like that's the way that I've heard it.
Yeah.
By yourself and some other people.
Yeah. And I've actually given you a fish.
People might think like you're telling. Yeah, it's like people might think like with coaching, you're being told exactly what to do every second, every minute. But that's not the case. It's like you're given principles and you work with those principles. And it's, yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. So like what you said there about getting shredded, and I did it in my kind of own way. But there was obviously the structure given by yourself, and I work with that. And I made it my own. So yeah, just to talk on that. I think
like going to with regards to the shit checking point. I mean, if Ben's listening, Ben will know what I mean by this. Ben is one of my football clients. Like we do a test after the end of every block. And Ben, to put it into perspective, Ben was brought up by a football team like 2 leagues higher than where he was previously playing for, and he's almost basically a professional footballer now at this stage. Like if he gets promoted next season, I think, and maybe the season after that, or if he gets bought up, whatever, he'll be a pro, which is amazing considering the way he was playing out before. Now so that's the bottom line result. And what we did was every block we would do a test, and so we know we're moving in the right direction. And I think that's the bottom line. It's like, otherwise, if you're not shit checking yourself, or like have methods in place to say, am I doing it right? Then you can lead your clients so astray. Because like you can just talk a good game, they've hired you, so they're monetarily involved. But if you're not actually shit checking yourself, like all my methods working? Then, or and that has to be sort of objective measures. So with yours, it was very simple. It was like body fat loss, and are you healthy and you're okay. With Ben, it's like after every block, we are checking, like, have we made improvements? We use a random objective marker of improvement. Have we made improvements? So that's how we're able to continue testing. Otherwise, you're just BSing yourself. And like ultimately, you can make some money that way because people will listen to you, whatever. But you're never going to have a lasting business. You're never going to actually get better. So going back to this guy who loves this high intensity training, like I don't know how the fuck he gets clients because he's young. Like in the grand scheme of things, he's like 30-ish, So he's got plenty of room for gains. But and he's also on the sauce as well. He's also on the swazzle, but he's not getting results. So like, dude, if you're on the sauce, if you're having mama's meatballs and at the same time you're not getting results, like, what the fuck is going on? So I don't know why people pay him, but they do. They freaking love it. So anyway, that was a massive tangent on the original sort of tangent on this was cult behavior and charismatic leaders of cults like Fung, like Cole, who draw people in. But the bottom line is results. Like if you're getting results, then that's cool. And results have got to encompass physical health, mental health, and the whole holistic thing. And like to your point as well, oftentimes that's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It just because those types of people who are pushing that aren't really in it for the glamour and the sex appeal. They're just in it for the results. Like Eric Helms is the guy in the industry I very much respect who does that, and Mena Hensman as well. They do things in a very flat way, which I like. Yeah. But anyway, there we go.
Yeah, I think where we went off from this was you're talking about the research in terms of the very low calorie diets. But I think on one of your previous podcasts that I listened to, you were talking about how to get clients motivated. So maybe like, introducing like carb cycling, and it's like, oh, this like novelty of something new is like helping them adhere to the program or the diet. So I can understand that as well. But yeah, just to touch on that point as well, just with that comment.
Right, let's go back to this because people would have forgotten the whole Shaun Nalewanj point. So I wanted to start off by saying that. So just to reiterate that point very quickly in one sentence. Start off by saying there are a lot of people in the industry who, now this Shaun guy has done this as well, where they're positioning themselves as the way to do things, and for everything else to be a failure. Like, Fung does the same thing, keto zealots do the same thing, fasting zealots do the same thing. But they're juxtapositioning themselves in that, but all diets have a notorious failure rate. So that's no argument. Like, because Fung's position is, again, regular diets don't work, do my diet. It's like all diets don't fucking work, dude. Like, so anyway, now we go on to the discussion of you can't talk shit about very low calorie diets, because very low calorie diets are kind of like that badass kid in the playground who is really quiet and has been around for ages. And is by this time also, because he's been very low calorie dieting, he's quite undernourished, but he's also got a very good backing. Like he knows his shit. So this is a systematic review of evidence on the use of very low calorie diets in people with diabetes. Now, the bit about people with diabetes, ignore that. That's not relevant to what I'm about to say. So the outcome is basically saying this. Review demonstrated that very low calorie diets was associated with significant weight loss, reduction in blood glucose profile, and improvement in cardiovascular risk profile, blah, blah, blah. Studies, one of these are saying, yes, actually, this is, yeah, this one here. And this is saying, but sorry, just find this. I should have highlighted this prior. Basically, anyway, I'll just summarize it. It's saying that very low calorie diets not only lead to significant weight loss, but they also lead to better outcomes in the long term. So if we go back to the first study that I looked at, which was long-term weight loss maintenance, the issue was people weren't holding on to these losses in the long term. Whereas very low calorie, so what we should be prioritizing in the research is diets and methodology, which allow us to actually hold on to that weight loss in the long term. So therefore, if very low calorie diets are improving outcome in the long term, you can't poo-poo them because they're actually markedly better than other types of diets in certain scenarios. So you can't just say, you can't just poo-poo them. You can't go around poo-pooing them. There's solid research backing this. And for anyone who doubts what I'm saying, because we'll address that about crash diets later, but for anyone who doubts what I'm saying, just go ahead and Google search VLCD long-term fat loss outcomes, or just VLCD fat loss on like PubMed or whatever, or like just type in VLCD long-term fat loss study. There are a ton of studies literally right the way back from this decade to last decade to last decade, going right the way back to the 1970s as ones that I've seen. So you can't just turn around, and he's making the same mistake as a lot of these diet gurus who are saying, don't overly restrict, all diets fail. Don't eat carbs, all diets fail. And this guy's now saying, yeah, don't be flexible, all diets fail. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. So two things to begin with. One, all diets fail anyway, regardless, Shaun. And two, you can't touch very low calorie diets because the research is very solid on that. So where are you getting it from? If it's just your opinion, well, it's fair enough, but your opinion's shit.
I was listening to Abel recently, and just from what you said, it's kind of got me thinking about, is it the actual diet that's the problem, or is it coming out of the diet? So, like the rebound, if you want to call it, or the recovery.
Definitely.
If you say to someone, carbs are the problem, right? Go on this diet, remove carbs. What happens when the diet's over?
Yeah.
Like, what is that person going to come out of the diet and do? They're going to avoid carbs. And then that relationship that you've built up with them on that approach could potentially harm them. And then that's where the regaining weight can come back, because they might just like end up binging on carbs, or it's like that mindset and that psychological approach, I think, where people might fail. So I don't know if that makes sense with what you just said. So from what I'm thinking about is,
I think with regards to that, what I would say
is it the diet?
That there are people out there who have made low carb work long term. Like I'm less certain about people who have made keto work long term, but like low carb, the way that you're eating currently, you can imagine there are people out there who don't have the activity levels you do, and who don't have the muscle building goals you do. Maybe like Debbie, the housewife from Birmingham, I don't know, just trying to pick an example of someone out there, and like maybe she'll more long term want to eat like salads and beef and chicken and all that kind of stuff, and maybe wouldn't mess with carbs. But then you think that, I don't know, I tend to think that also another thing that we know with long-term successes of diets is there has to be a certain degree of flexibility involved. So all I'd say on that point is what's sustainable for one person might look unusual. So it may well be a low carb approach. It may well be, because if that's good for you, then that's okay. So I guess with that, again, it's you're looking at the bottom line, looking at the outcome. It's kind of back to my conversations. You're looking at the outcome. Yeah, we can sit here and say, yeah, low carb approach might lead to binging afterwards, but also I think we've got to be careful on that, because for a lot of people, what's normal and what allows them to hold a good body composition long term and hold it without going crazy, it may well look different, and that's just something we've got to deal with. Like we can't sit and go, everyone's going to binge coming out of a keto diet or a low carb diet. We can say that there might be an increased probability, but there are people out there who are long-term keto. I'll tell you an example. There's a guy out there who goes by the name of Keto Gains, and he's pretty jacked. You should look him up. He's got like a subreddit on YouTube, and he's been on ketosis for like a decade or something like that, and like literally all the way through. And he's yoked, like he's big, natural guy as well. So there are people out there who are doing it. That in itself is not a good argument to say do it, but my argument is simply that we can't define what normal is. Normal is different for a lot of people. That's all I'd say on that. And I think, again, it's defined by results. If your approach allows you to hold on to a composition while not going crazy, that's your normal. It's cool.
Yeah, so like on that point, what I would say is like I'm not against carbs or anything, but like selecting certain like carbohydrates, I think like for myself just works better with my appetite and my hunger. But like what I've experienced in the past before is like you're being told that this approach is like this magic approach, and that it's the only way. It's the reason why you're not getting results.
Yes.
And that kind of in turn plays with your mindset, where it's like I have to do this forever now because this is the only thing that's going to work for me.
That's where I'm coming from. On that, what do you think about this? Right? What do you think about this? Like the fattiness of the diet, like if a diet's on a fad scale, let's say, right, the higher the scale, like, so the fattishness of a diet might be dictated by restrictions rather than what you can eat. So if you look at your diet videos, you've got a very healthy perspective of things. You talk about what you are eating. You don't sit there going like, today I'm like cutting carbs and doing this. You sit there going, I'm having a lot of salad. You know what I mean? What do you think about that?
No, 100% agree with that. So that's just clicked with me, like the way you put it. I find that a lot more healthier. So what you just said, I think people should take like a massive note on that point, because that's the way I look at stuff, and I think that's the way people should look at stuff as well. What can you instead of?
Sorry, go on.
No, I think I put this in an Instagram post where I kind of opened it up with, instead of approaching a diet, thinking I have to eat less, why not approach it with what can I eat like a lot of?
Yes.
I think that's that kind of, and what you said just then like resonated with me. So yeah, that's completely agree with that.
That's exactly it. So like if you look at all the sort of approaches which you seem are quite faddy, you like your Dr. Fung's. I don't know if he's a doctor or not. You like your Dr. Fung's, and his is all like don't eat carbs, don't do insulin. It's only when you scratch the surface a lot more where he's got a whole website about what you can eat, and I think that is a bit more helpful. But I think this whole don't restrict yourself, don't eat. I don't know. I find it very faddish, and I don't think people even almost realize they're being faddish, because literally someone will sit there and their entire Instagram feed will be about flexible dieting, but it's not talking about the benefits of flexible dieting. It's talking about the negatives of restricting yourself. And as we've seen, the research doesn't fucking support that, Bubba. It's like, you by all means talk about why your approach is better and why your approach is different and why your approach works for you and what the positives are, but positioning yourself rather than as to how my approach is good because of these factors, like protein is satiating, vegetables are great, is fantastic. But then juxtapositioning yourself to say, well, my position is great because carbs suck. Like, sorry, that's not the fucking way. Because some other guy sitting over there going, well, actually, I like carbs, I like low fat, and your approach sucks. And they're both just as bad as each other. Or it could be one person saying, you got to be flexible in your diet because restriction is bad. The other person's going, well, actually, restriction is what helps me diet. So that is faddishness. And the funny thing is, and this goes back to last week, those people who diet flexibly, they don't see that. They see themselves as this like shining light of the diet industry. It's like, fuck you, dude. It's like, you're just as bad as the rest of the guys. And I hate that. And they don't see it. They don't see it. They don't, and it's the same with the restrictive guys. They don't see it either. But nah, there you go. That's my rant. Anyway, right. So we were talking back to Shaun. I bet Shaun, if there's no way that Shaun Nalewanj is actually listening to this, but I want to finish rinsing him at this point. So we've said so far, just to summarize, that long-term weight loss outcomes are awful. We've said that very low calorie diet research is very, very positive for long-term outcomes. Now, I just want to give you the example of Lyle McDonald. Lyle McDonald is also a proponent of he somewhat thinks a lot like me. Well, I don't know. maybe that's arrogant to say, maybe I should say I think like him, but basically that what's normal and what works for the individual may well look very different, and that's okay. But he's acknowledged, and he's very hot on all the research, and he's acknowledged that very low calorie diets are highly beneficial. They've got a lot of research behind them, and for certain populations, for certain people, if they suit you, they can really do well with long-term outcomes. And long-term outcomes, like you were saying earlier, it's not the getting the weight off; it's the keeping it off. That's the problem. You know, it's the how you transition out of the diet, and again, how that could be for the next year or the next 5 years. So the example of Lyle McDonald, who's perhaps I would say probably the most synonymous in the fitness industry with diet. I mean, Lyle's been around. My brother did his ketogenic diet 23 years ago. That's how old school Lyle is, right? You know, my brother got absolutely shredded on his ketogenic diet 23 years ago, you know. And then if we also look at Martin McDonald is another diet guru, not related to Lyle McDonald, weirdly enough. Both diet gurus, the same surname. What's that about? Martin's been around for ages. He's also a very big proponent of very low calorie diets, strict diets. And I love he's got a term that he uses, and he calls, what does he call them? Well-meaning idiots. He calls people like this Shaun guy a well-meaning idiot, in that he's saying all this stuff about don't do crash diets, but there's no research behind it to back it up. There's nothing there. And he could make all these claims, which he's saying are applicable to everyone. Well, the assumption is they're applicable to everyone, like everyone should try this, blah, blah, blah. Or you're going to fail if you do a crash diet. And actually, it does not back to our research. So what he's saying is just absolute crap. So two major people in the diet industry there who back that up in terms of what we're talking about.
Yeah, like I like to think about it. Like before I give information, I like to, what's the word? Preface or preface? What's that word?
Preface.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So I like to, before I present information, I like to say, you know, do this checklist to see if this applies to you. Yeah. So like, for instance, like you've got person A and you've got person B. Person A has a really large appetite and they are not happy with their diet. Person B like struggles to get food down and their appetite's very low. So am I going to go to person B and say, eat high volume foods, you know, fill up your stomach as much as you can? Maybe not. Like, and the person that's struggling with their appetite, I'm not going to tell them go and eat rice and oats, you know, and avoid vegetables, because that's not going to work for them. So it's kind of like when you present information, kind of give the rationale behind it of why you're doing it. So like with my video, I opened it like saying carbs are not evil. This is the reason why I'm approaching this type of eating. Like it's just trying to present it and say why you're doing it. Give them like a checklist to work off to see if this applies to them, and then do what you want with that information.
I love that video.
It's harder.
I got on here. Like if you're listening to this, go check out Sunil's video on that, because it's a really good video on what to eat, not like don't eat this shit. It's like here's what you should eat. It's a very, very good video. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I find it hard to get people to execute like on what I try and show them. I find like the information is absorbed and it's taken in, but it's like getting them to execute it. It's very difficult, and I'm trying to figure out how do you get that person to take action and start using the advice. It's like that's what I'm trying to work around at the minute. I'm trying to understand and think, why are you not doing it? Like you know that it's there, you know that it works, but just trying to get that person to. That's what I'm kind of working around at the minute.
It's a tough one. I'm gonna move on to the next point, and what I wanted to talk a bit about was why people believe that very low calorie diets don't work. And I want to look at possible mechanisms behind that. And I've written down 3. Firstly, I want to look at the effect of water loss and water retention. So I think water, it plays a major head fuck with people when it comes to low calorie diets, because it goes both ways. So firstly, when they crash diet, they lose a ton of water. So like if you're going from somebody who's been eating loads during the Christmas period and they do the typical January crash diet, they could literally lose like a stone of just weight within 2 or 3 weeks. Like literally £5 a week, 14, 15 pounds within the 3rd week. You go, great, hit my goal, I'm done. See you later, folks. And then 1st of February, they put it all back on again. It's like, or maybe like, you know, put on like 12 pounds or whatever. Like, but so basically they've not really moved the needle at all. And they're like, oh God, I feel terrible. I feel so bloated. If you look at like, say, larger men and women, like 10 pounds of bloat is like, that's very easy to do. And then it's like, okay, the diet worked because I lost loads of weight. I'm back on my bullshit. So now I put all the weight back on again. It's like, you didn't do anything, you know, you just starved yourself for like a period of 3 weeks and you got some results, but you probably lost a bit of fat, but you lost a shit ton of water. Great. That, and then because you put it all back on again, doesn't mean that, and maybe they put it all back on and more. It doesn't mean that cash diets don't work. It means that you're fucking stupid. Like, you know, you had no patience. So I think it goes both ways. There's that, but I'll also say that the addition of water, yeah, well, like I said, it goes both ways. It goes down on the way down and on the way up. And I think that masks what people see. And in short term, the beginning of a diet, like 2 or 3 weeks, first 2 or 3 weeks, as you know, you can just lose a ton and regain a ton. You've got to just ignore the first 2 weeks of dieting, really, especially if you're coming from a very heavy weight. So I think that's the first reason why people think very low calorie diets or crash diets don't work. That's the first thing I'd say.
Yeah, like from my own experience, I've experienced that where you just drop kgs like it's nothing in the initial part. And just from working with people, when they experience that, they're very, very motivated. They're very happy to see that. And then once stuff starts to slow down, that's when they get frustrated. And it's kind of like reassuring them, like, don't stress out about this. So I think, yeah, water is it's very it can, yeah, it's got that double-edged sword to it. So I think, yeah, that's just something that I've experienced.
The way that I reassure them is I tell them from the start what to expect. Like, I'll say, look, from the beginning, it's like, dude, this weight gain. People get really excited. Like, I've got a guy doing a very low calorie diet at the moment, and he's lost probably 15 pounds already. It's been like a couple of weeks, and he's constantly messaging me saying, you know, this is amazing. And like, I'm not telling him it's not. You know, I'm not going to sit there and burst his bubble because, like, I'm like, yeah, this is great, but I'm also at the same time not overly blowing the whole, so not celebrating it right now. Like, you'll see my posts are all about the end result, you know, but like, so I think you see a lot of diet coaches. When I see diet coaches online who go, here's the results after 2 weeks, I just think, dickhead, you don't know anything. And it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's like they're fooling themselves. They don't have the checks in place. So yeah, I think the way that I solve that is I tell people about the process from the beginning, because I know what to expect. I was like, you are going to lose a ton of water in the first week or two, and that's great. And I'm not going to sit there and tell them flatly, look, this is all water, because like you said, they get motivated. It's just that I'm not going to plaster that all over Instagram as my client has been dieting for 2 weeks and has lost 5 kilos, because it's nothing to be proud of at that stage, you know? It's not a celebratory post at that point. It's like, okay, let's see what happens after 6 weeks, and let's go. And then if after 6 weeks they've lost 10 kilos, which is pretty typical, I find that quite normal with my guys, six weeks, about 10 kilos, then great, you know, then that's actual substantial weight loss. So you can't just hide that with water, and no one's putting on 10 kilos of water. Yeah, so that's how I get around that. And I'd say on the next point, I suppose the next point is kind of, I've written it down, but I think I've covered it already, is they regain a lot of weight from crash dieting because the reality is they've not actually lost that much fat. And I find, like, once, like you, for example, you're not going to accidentally wake up tomorrow 100 kilos again. Like it's gone, and it took a long time to get it off, and it's gone. Like, it's not coming back. So I think when people have this sort of, they're almost like in fear that they're going to wake up tomorrow like, shit, I'm going to regain 10 pounds, because they've not lost anything. They've just lost some water. And I think you've got to, as a coach, you've got to be the voice of reason there. You've got to be you've got to be that voice of reason and tempering expectations and say, look, this is great. We're on the right track because we're doing the right things, but we're not on the right track because we've lost 10 pounds in 3 weeks. That is just a consequence of doing the right things. And doing the right things is what's to be celebrated, not this like temporary inflation of water loss. The fact that you stuck to your diet, the fact that you executed everything I said correctly, the fact that you're walking around with less of an appetite, not more, and that you're on the road, like, that's great. But I'm not going to plaster all over Instagram your first 3 weeks of results, simply because it doesn't mean that much just yet. Yeah.
Yeah. On that point, falling in love with the process is something that I really relate to, and I love to practice rather than the end result. Like finding pleasure in the journey and the process is something that I very much enjoy, and I try and learn from that every time I go through like a dieting phase or maintenance phase, and I carry that experience and those successes into my next phases. So like what you said there, I think about finding like pleasure in the little things. And if you're doing everything you should be, you shouldn't really be worried about what's going on.
Yes. Yes.
It's hard to say, and it's hard to kind of tell people that, because they want those kind of instant, results sometimes. But if you're doing everything you should be doing, I don't think you should be worried, because you're not giving yourself an excuse to not get results. So yeah, that's just a bit on that.
I think this goes back to your point about the sex appeal of like diet coaches who sell sex appeal of diets, because you're there and so am I, saying, okay, great, this is fantastic, it's a good couple of weeks, but the reality is a lot of it's going to be water. So you're whereas let's say you and I were unscrupulous coaches who were just after people's money and we're just looking to like get just basically sell the glamour of it. We're like, yeah, this is amazing. 3 weeks, you lost 10 pounds. You are great, but I'm a fucking genius. And like, let's put this on Instagram straight away and you look no different, Like that's what an unscrupulous coach should do. But I think if you are more interested in what are factual results, you don't get excited about those. Then yeah, like you say, let your client get excited. Of course, like they're going to be loving it anyway, but at least, and there's no need to poop on their parade, but at the same time, as I say, it's not just about overdoing it. All right. So the next and final point I'd say on the dangers of very low calorie diets is that most people do them in a really bad way. So most people, when they crash diet, they just eat what they want to eat, but in very, very, very small amounts. And also they don't train. So the first thing is like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Like my usual diet is just coffee, donuts, and bad intentions. And what I'm going to do is, rather than having 4,000 calories worth of coffee, donuts, and bad intentions, I'm going to have 500 calories worth of coffee, donuts, and bad intentions. And that just results in possibly even more muscle loss, and then no resistance training. So basically, okay, congratulations, you did drop 14 pounds in 3 weeks, of which exactly 3 pounds were muscle. Then you put it all back on. Congratulations. The net effect is, Linda from accounts, I don't know, you've just burnt off 3 pounds of very, very useful muscle tissue. Congratulations. And well done. See you next time.
Yeah, like I know by now, like if someone's having the issues with I don't know how to word this, but if they're having issues and I ask them and I probe them with questions, and they're answering the questions and I'm getting these answers back, and I know like if they change this, then their experience will be drastically different.
Yeah.
From your experience, my experience, from people that I worked with that put that plan into action and they execute, I've found like it works. But the moment like they aren't executing and putting that into action, and they're answering these questions that I asked them, back with like these typical answers that I kind of see where these issues arise, then it's like, all right, I know why this is occurring. I know why you're experiencing this. But like to my previous point, how do I get that person to execute? It's just, that's the problem that I'm finding. Yeah. But like on that point of what you said, the 500 calories of donuts versus 500 calories of salad is very different. So
yeah, no, totally. I think just to wrap this bit up, because I wanted to finish this section on Shaun and what Shaun represents in the diet industry, is let's just briefly defend very low calorie diets and what are some of the benefits that people might see. And we talked a bit about it last week, so very, very briefly, I think I want to say, like, in the research, firstly, it shows you get results a lot faster. So basically, you all the good results a lot faster. So all the same benefits you would get with caloric restriction as you get quick fat loss. Also quick weight loss initial, but that's true for every diet. Quick fat loss, greater improvements in metabolic markers like cardiovascular markers, risk factors, all that kind of stuff. And in my experience and experience of my clients, generally better adherence. And this is the unusual thing, that at a certain break point, you just drop your appetite. Now, this is not true for everyone, but it's certainly been true for, I would say, 99% of the people that I've worked with. And you got to bear in mind my audience. A lot of my clients are fat loss clients, particularly this last year since we've been locked down. I mean, you just look on my page, like the amount of results consistently week in, week out. And a lot of those have been with very low calorie diets because it switches off your appetite. And I always say to people, like, it's a powerful tool to be able to go into a diet and wake up and go into your day with appetite under control. So yes, we could be more flexible, but then we would spike your appetite. So we factor in the pros and cons. Allow yourself to be more flexible and deal with the hunger, or restrict yourself and benefit from the lack of hunger. And this is why I'm always upfront about that. And so to summarize, that's why to summarize, that's an hour of why I think Shaun Nalewanj is full of shit. That's is basically it. No, I was just seriously. Well, but to summarize, I just want to finish off by saying, like, I think Shaun's like, he's obviously trying to help people, but what I would say is, in this instance, he's made the same mistake that puts him right alongside the Fungs and the Coles and all those, and all the extreme sort of like the same people we were talking about last week. Puts him in that camp of people who say that everything else is bad, or X, Y, and Z is bad because people fail diets, or because you're going to get an eating disorder, or because whatever outcome you're going to set yourself on fire. I don't know, like whatever outcome it is, like something bad's going to happen because diet, or because you do this diet, rather than look at a more holistic picture and look at a more mature view and say, actually, tons of approaches work. So let's not focus on X, Y, and Z. Let's not throw stones and say, well, your approach doesn't work for this reason. There's no perfect approach. So yeah, that's right. All you flexible dieters who are listening, which is probably 5 people, like, just understand, if it works for you, cool, man. Like, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you found something that's worked for you, and that's great. But it might not work for somebody else. And just understand that the definition in my book, our book potentially, of a fad diet is one which is based upon restriction rather than based on what you can eat. That is some fad diet bullshit. It's like, okay, here's my diet, don't eat for 24 hours a day. Rather than, actually, here's my diet, we can benefit from some of the benefits of fasting, and by having X, Y, and Z. But anyway, I'm getting off the point here. What I want to say is, just in summary, that's why I think Shaun is full of shit on this point. Also, basically, he's not backed up by the research. What he's saying just isn't true. It's just false, and it puts him in the same camp of people like your Fungs and your Coles. So that's my conclusion on that.
I'm going to keep it very short. I'm going to keep hammering this point home until until it gets through to people's heads. 3 words, probably 4 words: high protein, vegetables, and fruit. Like, that's just what I'm going to keep pushing and just keep getting across to people. That's all I have to say, really. Start practicing that and see what happens, and get back to me with how you find that. But it's just, like that point I made about execute that. Just go out and execute it and see what happens. With a high protein intake, getting your vegetables and getting your fruit. Like, I can't see anything wrong with that advice. And just to sum up that,
I think, you know what, I think that's probably the basis of most successful diets. So I think if you start with that, and it's a good starting point. I don't know any diet which actually works, which would, even very low calorie diets, which wouldn't allow you to have lots of protein, high vegetable intake, and a varying amount of fruit intake, depending on what fruit that is. But then that's the same for vegetables as well. And it's the same for protein. But that's your point. Just, it'll vary based on what the diet is. But the beginnings is, oops, door's gone. 1 second. Right. So I guess we should wrap up by talking about your and my recent low carb experiences. So what you've been doing.
So yeah, like I'm finding like I found over the past year, obviously with my massive cut, mini cut, and then in basically every lockdown, I'm kind of finding silver linings in terms of like how I approach my diet and my nutrition. So in this lockdown, what I've kind of, I'm one day in practicing it, but I'm really happy at the minute with what I'm doing. And the reason is because I'm practicing allowing myself to eat a lot more. So what I mean by that is I'm just going to kind of reiterate what I've put in my video. I'm choosing sources that work well with my appetite. So if I was to like go and choose a carb source, like for example like oats or rice, for me personally, like that does not do a lot for my appetite and my hunger, and it leaves me like unhappy like throughout the day because I'm not really satisfied or satiated. So how I work around that is by just eating. Like I always put this in my posts, but like pounds of vegetables, and like that's what works for me. Yes. That's what like leaves me satisfied. That's what leaves me like happy, and I know that now, like because I've tried the let me try like the bro oatmeal because it's healthy, and the rice and the rice cakes. But I found like, gram for gram, the vegetables and the fruit and the leafy greens do a lot more for me rather than eating oats because oats are healthy, if that makes sense. I've got nothing against oats or rice or anything.
Yeah, it totally makes
sense. Just for me personally, yeah, like my appetite is quite big, I would say. And I've mentioned this before where I do not have a problem pushing food. Yes. I can push a lot of food, I believe. But for someone that's like struggling to push food and their appetite's not big, then maybe, yeah, oats and rice would work well for you. But for me personally, like my checklist, it does not work well for me. And that's why I have to eat the vegetables and the fruit just to be happier with myself. And if I make the
oatmeal thing is survivorship bias. It's like it's known as bodybuilding food because generally all pro bodybuilders are going to be guys who have a perfect metabolism for that kind of stuff. Like, so yeah, they're going to want to have all that stuff. It's probably not the best option for average Joe. Anyway, sorry, Karen.
No, like I'd love to hear like your thoughts on this because like I've identified and I know now that I have to consume like a certain amount of vegetables and fruit in my diet. If I don't do that, then I'm not happy, and I know that now. So I'm not going to do things that are going to make me unhappy. So yeah, that's what I've kind of learned and figured out. And I try to pick this up with other people as well. Like, are you eating a certain amount of vegetables, like you've mentioned as well before in our discussions? If you're not, then what's the harm in trying it and just seeing what happens, rather than sticking to your current approach and being unhappy in that? So I just throw that over to you.
I really like that point that you said just there, and I want to just hone in on that for a second. Is doing what makes you happy. I was watching a podcast with Mena Henselman. I really like him. I think he's got a brilliant mind. He identifies as being a hedonist. Hedonist is essentially a school of philosophy which says whatever you should do it for the pursuit of happiness, and that's all you should do. So he ascribes to a way of eating which allows him to hold the best body fat composition for him. He stays really lean year round, and that approach is essentially low carb, which is what you're describing, which is meats, vegetables, fruits, and that's all he eats for the most part year round, unless he wants to really cut down. And getting down to like shredded contest shape for him is easy. He just goes keto because he doesn't have time to do a bunch of cardio. He doesn't actually train that much. I think maybe he does like full body workouts, varying times a week. But the point is, he's not like insanely active, and he doesn't want to be. It would interfere with his lifestyle too much, but it wouldn't make him happy to do lots of cardio. So instead, year round, he holds this condition which allows him to be happy with himself by doing a low carb approach. But essentially, the way that he frames it is, I just eat lots of vegetables because they keep me full. My carbohydrates come from vegetables mostly because they keep me full. Basically, everything you're saying, because he does it for the pursuit of happiness. And I think that's where people get this mixed up, because they're like, well, you know what? I want a donut because a donut's going to make me happy. Or I want to eat what I like because eat what I like is going to make me happy. Like, is it though? Is it really? Like, then why are we having this conversation if it is? Because it's obviously fucking not. So you're lying to yourself, you're lying to yourself to justify having X, Y, and Z but still not being happy with your body at the end of the day. So like there's that crosshairs. And what makes it worse is people will say to them, these flexible dieters, this is why I hate them so much. I don't hate flexible dieting. I want to say I hate flexible dieting coaches for the most part, because they'll feed into that and they'll like, well, you know what? You can have your this, you can have your pizza, you can have that. And you can still, but the trade-off is you're going to be hungry 24 hours a day, but they don't tell them that. And that's in the small print. Again, it's like, oh, that's what annoys me so much. But yeah, anyway, I thought it matched really well with what you were saying. So.
No, I agree with that. And I'm talking about this from experience. So I've gone through this. It's all online as well. So you can like literally see my dieting history online. Yeah. And it's there to see. So I'm not lying or anything. Have a look at what I was doing. I was having the oatmeal. I was having the rice cakes. It worked, but like I'm finding that if I stick to vegetables and fruit, I'm a lot happier. It doesn't mean that I'm not happy eating those other sources.
Yes.
It's just like this is what works well for
Overall,
me.
You're happy.
So yeah, I'm not saying like don't eat oatmeal and rice. I'm saying if you're finding that those choices kind of upset you throughout the day and you're finding that you want to eat more, maybe try the vegetables and fruit and the high protein and see what happens. So I find people get stuck in this perpetual cycle where they're just stuck in the cycle and they can't get out of it, and they're just going in circles.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I would say on that. Yeah.
I think that's the thing that it's you. I think I mean that was a great summary. There's not much I can add to that. I'll just say what I've been doing is very similar. So I think the way that I've dieted in the past, I have dieted with very low calorie diets, and what I've been experimenting with now is a diet which the problem I've had with those type of diets is I've tended, because the calories have been so low, like 1100, 1200 calories, because it's mostly been from like lean proteins, high vegetables, all that kind of stuff. I've needed to have a refeed. So there's been a need to have like a refeed at the end of the week, or like a cheat meal, or both, all that kind of stuff. Now, this is going to sound really weird to people out there now, but I don't actually want cheat meals and refeeds at the moment. So I've got to figure out, so high protein, great, non-negotiable. High vegetables, great, non-negotiable. I still have about 800 grams of fibrous vegetables a day. That's a lot, That's like 10 for the people who are listening at home. It's like 10 a day if you're in the UK. So that's non-negotiable for me. So then it's like, well, where do I add in the rest of my calories if I'm not going to have a cheat meal or a refeed of like, however many calories per week? So, well, I can add them in via carbs, or I can add them in via fats. Now, realistically speaking, I can't eat much more fibrous vegetables during the course of the day, because that will be a hell of a lot, maybe starchy vegetables, sure. But so I've recently tried to add them in via fats and perhaps more protein. So right now I'm on what I would still call a very low calorie diet. So rather than a keto diet, because I think a keto diet is defined by less than 50 grams. And some days I'm like maybe 70 grams, but like whatever. I guess it's virtually a keto diet. So, but then I find it weird to talk about it being a keto diet. Keto diet is just like a word to say this is the way I'm eating, but it's got so much stigma attached to it. Like, I don't even like to identify it as being on a keto diet, because it's got a whole bunch of stigma attached. It sounds like a very extreme diet, but I guess all I want to say is like, I'm eating a lot of meat, just like anybody else, eating a lot of vegetables, all very good for me. I'm not putting like butter in my coffee and stupid stuff like that, because that's just fucking dumb. Like no one should be doing that. Like that's just asking for trouble. Like I'm not saying you're gonna get a heart attack, but it's asking for trouble. So, but yeah, all I'm doing is basically choosing fattier cuts of meat because they're more tasty. It's hard eating chicken all the time, man. It's not easy. It's good if you got a goal in mind. Like if you want to lose X, Y, and Z to get down to a certain body fat. Well, like I'm reasonably lean now. I'm not wanting, the desperation to lose body fat is not there anymore. And I need to find an approach which works for me long term. And what Menno said recently really resonated with me. And he basically does that. So rather than this pulse, I like his approach a lot because he eschews pulsatility. And I'm actually leaning more towards that in my training at the moment, which is another conversation for another day. But I like the idea of routine, because routine equals less decision fatigue. So I'm going to use one of your term that you like to use, less decision fatigue. So whereas if I'm constantly cycling my volume of my training, and if I'm constantly having the ups and downs of cheat meals, refeeds, and all that kind of, there's a high degree of pulsatility. I'm never baseline normal. I'm always to the point where it's like I'm working on something. You could even expand this out to like training. I mean, you could do an upper lower, but what is the least psychologically disruptive and physiologically disruptive while still allowing you to grow? Well, full body workouts, which is kind of how Menno does things. I really like that approach because you're hitting everything with you're still having your volume across the week, but you're doing it in a way which allows for the least amount of interference, for any one body part, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does. But anyway, that's not the main thing I want to talk about. It was just a diet. So I wanted to do away with the cheat meals. I wanted to do away with refeeds. I don't like the way I feel after them. They're fun while I'm doing them, sure. Like, who doesn't like having a cheat meal? But I just don't like the way I feel, after them. Yeah, exactly right. So I don't like how I feel the next morning. I don't want to have to think about it in that way. I'm starting to derive a lot more pleasure from just doing other things, like spending time with loved ones, watching, my favorite TV programs, playing video games, all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm starting to derive on my work as well. I don't want to always be deriving pleasure from food. I'm not saying I can't, as I'm like, today's Sunday and last night was Saturday night. And had I wanted to have a cheat meal, I would have had one, but I didn't want to. So perhaps in a few weeks I will, and that's great. But it's not a decision that I'm saying to myself, I'm never going to have a cheat meal again, or I'm never going to have a pizza again. I'll have it if I really want it. I just, right now, going back to your point again, what makes me happier is having that stability in my life and stability in my dietary schedule. So where have I added the calories back in? I've added them in via fats because I don't like the way that carbs make me feel. So the non-negotiables are all still there, like for any diet: high protein, high vegetables. But because I don't want to have the refeeds and the cheat meals to top my calories up before I get too exhausted, I've added them in on via fats. And I've found, so I think I've been in ketosis for like a week. I don't think it takes me that long to get into ketosis because I've done so much fasting. So for me, I feel very much like I do when I'm fasting, except I don't feel the hunger. So fasting always makes me feel really like calm and level, but with like a underlying gnawing for food. Whereas if I'm eating the way I'm eating now, however you want to call it, I don't get that. So I feel full, I feel good, and I'm fine. So I guess I really like it. So I've probably been in ketosis for about a full week, and I feel a-okay, no performance loss. I'm sleeping well. I feel great, So that's what I'm currently doing. I'm planning on giving it a good 8-week trial. Again, kind of like the way I read Obesity Code by Fung. I need to experience it to be able to comment on it, I feel. So I need to experience this keto diet to be able to really comment it and say, well, okay, you know what? I did 8 weeks of that. And maybe 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, I will turn around and go, you know what, Sunil, that was a fucking disaster. I don't know what I was thinking about at the end of week 1, but you never know, right? So at least I can talk about it. So week 1's down. I feel great. We shall see. So we'll keep you guys updated with what we think.
Yeah, right. Did you want me to comment? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. And we'll probably do a wrap up actually. Like, what do you think? Should we call it there?
Yeah, I think that was great what you just summarized there. There's a lot of stuff that I was thinking about while you were talking. Just thinking about, like successful people and their habits and their traits. Like, one thing that came across my mind was how, kind of successful people don't really think about fashion, and they just wear the same clothes or the same colors day in, day out. So they start their day with not having to think about that decision. Yes. They get on with the day. There's a lot of things like there, like you said, that kind of got my mind jogging, just about, you know, decisions that you make, and what makes you kind of happier. Because like if you start your day looking at your wardrobe and you're like, I don't even know what I want to wear, like you're starting your day like that. I think, yeah, there's a lot of things that I took away from what you just said, and
I love
thought
that
about.
example. I've used that loads, like the wardrobe thing. Like apparently Einstein never used to do that. Not Bill Gates, the guy who's in charge of Apple.
Elon Musk.
Yeah,
Oh, Steve Jobs.
as well. Okay, yeah, there you go. And I use that example loads, but I've never pushed it out as far as I am now. Like I try and do that with every aspect. Things I wouldn't even think about, like diet. But yeah, no, I think that's a great. I use it all the time. Sorry, carry on.
No, yeah, that's just, yeah, what you just said there just got me thinking about a lot of that stuff. I like kind of psychology and philosophy, so I listen to like a lot of people and a lot of teachers and lecturers on like that, and I try and see, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I'm really interested in, just like outside of fitness and stuff. But I try and apply that to my fitness, and I try and learn from other successful people with their habits that aren't even fitness related, and just seeing like, you know, what are you doing in your realm, in your industry, and then applying that to fitness and health just in general. So yeah, I really enjoyed what you said there. And to leave like a cliffhanger for the future episode, Faz's post on his failure set with free weight barbell back squats was amazing. It's freaking the coolest thing I've seen like in the longest time. And I'd love to talk about like that in a future podcast, but let us know in the comments, like, and just with the feedback, if that's something that, you know, the guys would be interested in hearing. Because if you've not seen that post, go on Faz Lifts Instagram and just have a look. Because yeah, like I said, it's one of the coolest things that I've seen in a long time, and in lockdown. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And yeah, I think if you're listening to this, whoever's YouTube you listen to this on, whether it's mine or Sunil's, hit like, subscribe, and it'll all be on all my various podcast platforms as well. So SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and others as well. I've signed up to a lot. Just giving you reviews on iTunes would be really useful, actually. So, you know, this is the kind of stuff we should say at the start of the video, apparently. This is what, according to like good YouTubers and good podcasters, we should say subscribe at the beginning. So next time we're going to do that. So, all right. But anyway, we'll call it there. And yeah, dude, thank you for the chat. I really enjoyed that.